A lot of change happening in real estate right now, probably impacting the title side a little bit.
Yeah, slightly.
But I want to touch base a little on the changes that are out there because consumers, I don't think, quite understand what's happening. And the main change is there was a legal settlement with the National Association of Realtors and the MLSs and all of the real estate brokerages, basically. I think the majority of brokerages, maybe some haven't completely settled yet, but
there's still a few outstanding,
mostly,
I believe.
It's mostly everybody.
Yep.
And what it basically entails is that now when a buyer agent, an agent representing a buyer, is going to help that customer facilitate a transaction, the buyer's agent, if they're not showing their own listing, because you can show your own listings, but if you're not showing your brokerage's listings and you're showing someone else's listing, you have to have a signed agreement with that customer indicating what your fee structure is, what your charge is, and that you're representing them. And that fee structure has to go throughout the transaction. In other words, you can't raise it, you can't charge them more. And certainly the fee structure can be covered through cooperative compensation. In other words, the buyer agent can ask the broker or the seller to pay their commission, or, of course, ask the buyer to pay their commission if the seller or broker are unwilling. So there are a lot of agents that are going to struggle with it. And I think there's a lot of consumers that are going to just be used to saying, hey, I want to go look at that house and having the door opened. Yeah. And that's not going to happen are there going to be people who break the rules? Of course, but it's not going to happen as much anymore.
The conversation on the buyer side of the transaction used to be simple. Hi, I'm a realtor. My services are free to you.
Right. So because I'm going to get paid from the other side.
Because I'm going to get paid from the other side.
And it was never really true.
No.
Because there was someone, because the buyer's money is the one coming to the table, right? So somewhere, whether or not it shows over here on this side of the settlement statement as expense or, however you want to, spin it around, which is what was essentially happening, it wasn't really free, No. And so now they've stripped that away and decoupled it and said, hey, look, properties can go on MLS with no co-broke. Yep. Sellers can choose to not offer a cooperative compensation or negotiate it based on the offer. Yeah. And buyers have to disclose what they're getting paid prior to, an agency agreement, prior to showing homes, and they have to have an agreement to show homes, or they're getting fined. They're having, all kinds of stuff can happen. So I do like the transparency of it. Of course, you have a lot of real estate agents who were just used to being entitled door openers that are now screaming bloody murder that they're not, their job is harder now.
Now you have a value proposition to uphold to your client. You've got to tell them what I'm doing for the services. Yeah. And am I potentially going to get paid on the commission, or is it out of pocket?
Right. Correct.
And so, I use a worst case scenario. Let's just go with a scenario that I'm a buyer and I've found my dream home and I'm in love with it.
Yeah.
And that listing agent, maybe they didn't build any commission to the buyer side on that deal.
Correct.
And then now I'm in love with this home, and I've got a buyer's agent who is saying, I need you to pay me X. And my cash to close is only got $20,000 to buy this house with, and maybe I can't afford to pay you a $10,000 commission.
And that's going to happen. And I think, again, now the reality is that it is. So here's what I do think. I do believe that cooperative compensation does get more attraction for the seller, and we're still going to recommend it. However, I also understand that there shouldn't, and my business has never been a standard. If a customer doesn't want to participate in that, then they simply don't participate in that, and we still do our job as the listing agent to do everything we can to market and sell the property. And I think that there are going to be some customers that are going to go in maybe unrepresented or overpay because they're dealing with the seller's agent, but there's plenty of them that are savvy. They're probably going to do well. But I think the point is that the ease of access into the property is probably going to change a little bit, because now there is, instead of just calling an agent and scanning it into a lockbox, there's a couple more steps that are gonna happen. Those are things, in my opinion, that should have always happened. There's a lot of crazies out there. There's serial killers. There's rapists. There's all. I mean, we background check sometimes through some services with the Florida Association of Realtors, prospective leads, and it's wild some of the stuff you find. Yeah. And so I always think buyers should have had a buyer broker agreement. They should have had a representation agreement. They should have been able to vet out their client to make sure that they're not going to get chopped up and thrown in the back of a truck when they go show the property. But now it's really forced it, not just from a safety perspective, but from a legal perspective, saying if you are showing homes, you need to have an agreement with that client that discloses fees.
I think this forces the professionalism to increase.
Of course.
Now, so now, look, I mean, those are your job and my job are made more difficult when an agent
doesn't know what they're doing.
They do one transaction a year,
right?
And they work full time somewhere else, and we're trying to conduct a closing and communicate with people, and we don't get a call back until after 5 p.m. because they were on their full time job.
Yep. And then the advice that they're giving their customer and the experience and the negotiation and how to navigate through challenges and obstacles. I mean, look, man, my track record, my team's got $3 billion in sales, like thousands and thousands of sales throughout the years of doing this, and I think over 7,000 now, which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And so when you get that experience through the transactions, and somebody that doesn't have that is still getting paid in some instances the same as the person with all the experience. And I think the decoupling will actually have the cream rise to the top. The better agents will actually be able to say, hey, I deserve a raise.
Yeah.
I effectively am better than the average, because now it is stripped away. And of course, I think there's some agents who will race to the bottom and say, hey, I'll basically work for free, and there'll be more of that. But I think the reality is the cream will rise to the top. The really strong companies will get stronger, because a lot of the competition of the strong teams out there, and I'm not the only one, there's a lot of great teams in Tampa Bay. A lot of our competition is the agent that's the friend's uncle's brother's cousin that does like one deal a year. And let me, instead of my goal of getting the most money out of the sale of my house or negotiating the best deal, my goal is, helping my family member's business. Those things don't always align. And so we see that happen where the customer gets bad advice, buys a wrong house, overpays, doesn't get something negotiated in inspections, or doesn't get the right concessions, or whatever it is, because that agent just doesn't have the at-bats. And I think now those agents that don't get the at-bats just aren't going to get enough deals anymore to be able to survive. I think we will over time see a drop in the number of agents